Oh, hello there. So, one of my least favorite exotics is actually really good. It's called the Vesper of Radius, and today I've got a build revolving completely around it to show you. So let's just get into it. First off, what exactly is Vesper of Radius and what does it do? So, Vesper of Radius is an exotic chess piece for warlocks, and its exotic perk states rifts periodically release arc shockwaves. Final blows with these shockwaves create an arc explosion. While an arc subclass is equipped, the shockwaves and subsequent explosions blind nearby targets, and rift energy recharges faster when you are surrounded by targets. Now, this regen buff is nothing to laugh at. At just 3 enemies, it's buffed by 250%, 4 enemies, 666%, 5 enemies, 1085%, and then 6 or more enemies at 1500% extra regeneration for your class ability, which is just insane. And because the exotic states that it blinds enemies with its ability if you're in an arc subclass, that's exactly what we're going to be on, and that feeds straight into one of our aspects, the Electrostatic Mind, in which it reads defeating targets with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an ionic trace. Collecting an ionic trace makes you amplified. This is amazing because we're just going to be trying to blind everyone, and it's always nice to have a steady income of ionic traces to give you super energy, ability energy, and they're also just nice to have. But to even be able to use the exotic, we're going to need a class ability. For this, we're going to be using Healing Rift. Now, we're going to be using this because to use the exotic, we need to be surrounded by enemies, so we're going to be jumping into the fray to put down our class ability. So it's always nice to have a bit of healing, because you're locked in the animation, you can't move, and the enemies are just going to be wailing on you. So it's going to be very nice to get some healing afterwards. And we're going to add a little extra firepower to our rift by adding Arc Soul into the mix as our second aspect, which states cast your rift to create an Arc Soul that fires at targets in front of you. Allies can pass through your rift to gain an Arc Soul themselves, and your rift charges faster when allies are nearby. And it also states that while amplified, your Arc Souls are supercharged and gain increased fire rate. Now this is amazing because we're going to be putting down a ton of rifts and we're almost always going to be amplified. So we're basically going to have an infinite Arc Soul that does extra damage because of its increased fire rate, and this is just amazing for an extra damage boost. And to add to the list of abilities that get stronger while amplified, look at Chain Lightning, which is the arc melee that states an extended range melee that jolts your target and chains lightning to nearby targets. While amplified, it creates an additional set of chains. Now this is very good because it synergizes quite well with some of the mods that I'll showcase later, and it's just all around good melee for getting ad clear done. And to round out the core abilities, we're going to be talking about the grenade and then the super. First off though, for the grenade, I'm going to be using Pulse Grenade because it's my favourite arc grenade and I feel like it's the better one. So this grenade is basically like Vortex Grenade and Solar Grenade, but to be able to do the damage, it takes a couple seconds each time to pulse, as the name suggests. And this is just a very good grenade in my opinion. As for the super though, I'm going to be running Chaos Reach. You could run Storm Trance if you really want to, but I'm using Chaos Reach just in case I need to do some good damage against someone. And it says unleash a long-range channeled beam of concentrated arc energy, and sustained damage on a single target creates a jolting lightning strike at their position. Doesn't do nearly as much damage as, say, a Nova Bomb, but it's the most damage super you can get on an Arc Warlock, so you might as well run it. Going back to the grenades though for a second, we're going to buff them up even more by running Spark of Shock, which states that your arc grenades jolt targets. This does minus 10 discipline, but that's more than worth the trade-off, as jolting allows them to take additional damage while jolted, and they chain lightning to nearby targets, making grenades do more damage, and be excellent at ad clear, and the jolt even stuns overload champions. And to add on to the jolting, we're going to be running Spark of Ions, which states defeating a jolted target creates an ionic trace. Now we talked earlier about how great ionic traces are, and we just talked about jolting, so this is just a very nice thing to have. And for our third fragment, we're going to be running Spark of Amplitude, which states rapidly defeating targets while you are amplified creates an orb of power. Now this is amazing because we're almost always going to be amplified thanks to Electrostatic Mind making every ionic trace make us amplified. And because of that, every rapid kill we get creates an orb of power, which is amazing for some of the mods we're going to be talking about later, and also for getting your super back quickly. And for our fourth and final fragment, we're going to be running Spark of Resistance, which states, while surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. This gives us 10 extra strength, but that's not all that needed. But the effect itself is insane for this, because we're always going to be surrounded to even use the exotic. So to get some damage resist is just very nice to have, so you take less damage, so you don't die, and then your healing rift can just heal you back anyway. And I highly suggest running that with a Glaive. For the remainder of this season, I suggest running a Arc Glaive, so for the next week, because it synergizes with some artifact mods we'll talk about in a second. But it doesn't matter what perks you have on your Glaive. For example, my Nezaric's Whisper is level 2 when I originally used this build. It is level 6 now, but when I originally used the build it was level 2, and I still haven't even upgraded the perks. Now the reason we're running a Glaive for this is because a Glaive shield blocks so much damage. For example, watch what I survived in a GM with just the Arc subclass, an artifact mod which we'll touch on right after this, and a Glaive shield. So let's talk about the artifact mods that are going away in 10 days. I'm going to apologise for the timing of the video later, and I'm going to give my reasoning for why the video is so late. But just know that these artifact mods aren't needed. They are very nice to have, but they aren't absolutely needed. This build will still be very strong in the coming seasons, as long as they don't nerf Vesper, which they might because this build is very strong. So first off, we have Unstoppable Glaive. This is very nice to have because we are running a Glaive for its shield, but in the coming seasons you're going to have to run a kinetic slot weapon that can handle unstoppable champions in your given activity. The next artifact perk is going to be Thunderous Retort, which grants bonus arc super damage if cast while critically wounded or while amplified. Now you can do without this in the next coming seasons, it's just your Chaos Reach will do slightly less damage. Now the next artifact perk is called Amped Up. You can definitely do without this, as all it does is make amplified last longer, and we basically are always amplified anyway because of the amount of ionic traces we make. Though this next one is going to be very depressing to see go. Electric Armor. Gain damage resistance while amplified. This is what added on to the Glaive shield and the fragment already, but you still have the fragment and the Glaive shield. It will be sad to see it go, but you'll still be powerful without it. And then we have Lightning Strikes Twice. After throwing an Arc Grenade, gain increased grenade recharge for a short time. Arc Final Blows extend the duration of this effect. This is a very nice thing to have, but you can do without it. You will get your grenade back anyway by other means. And finally for the artifact, we have Shock and Awe. Arc Final Blows, while you are amplified, summon a burst of lightning that damages and jolts targets. This is why we wanted the Glaive to preferably be Arc, but you can easily do without this, as it didn't really add that much to the build. So now that we're done with the artifact mods, let's talk about the armor mods. So first off, for the helmet, we're going to be running Double Dynamo, because we're always going to be putting down our class ability next to enemies, so this is just going to give us a ton of super energy, so we can spam Chaos Reach as much as we want. And now for the arms, we're going to be running Double Focusing Strike, so every time we deal damage with our melee, we get part of our rift back, and we're also going to be running Bolstering Detonation, so every time we deal damage with a grenade, we also get our rift back, so we can spam the rift even more than we already do. And as for the chest piece itself, I suggest running 2 resists. They can be different elements or the same element depending on what activity you're doing, and emergency reinforcement. This is a change I have literally just made a month later because I feel like it'll help you extra as just a last resort. And now for the legs, I suggest running Insulation, so every time you pick up an Orb of Power, your class ability cooldown decreases. And then I also suggest running Absolution, so it reduces all ability cooldowns every time you pick up an Orb of Power. And then, to add on to the change I made a month later with the chest piece, I suggest Elemental Charge, collecting a Ionic Trace has an escalating chance to give you an armor charge, and we are going to be making a lot of those to feed into emergency reinforcement. And as for the bond, I suggest running a bomber mod, so you reduce the grenade cooldown when using your class ability, and a distribution mod, so you can reduce all ability cooldowns when using your class ability near targets. And you know, like I've said multiple times during the video, this build is all about class abilities. Use them as much as you can. And then, also, we're going to be using Powerful Attraction, because we're going to be using a lot of class abilities. Might as well grab any orbs nearby if you do. Okay, so now that the build is done, I want to quickly take this part of the video to apologise, explain why the video is so late, and thank you all. So first, I'm sorry the video is so late. I originally planned to record, edit, and release the video a week exactly after the Trip Mine build, but that hasn't really worked out. They disabled a bunch of Gauntlet mods when I went to record this, so I couldn't really do it. And then I got ill for a while, and then I had my birthday. And then I just haven't had really any motivation to play Destiny because of the community uproar, but I am going to get back into it and make more content for you. But at least the video's here now. And now I want to take the opportunity to thank you all. At the end of the last video, I asked if anyone watching this could subscribe, because we were at 99 subscribers, one away from 100. And you all just blew that away. Like, in the last 31 days, we have gotten 81 subscribers, which is insane to me. I know it's not as much as other YouTubers get, but to me, this is insane, and thank you all so much for that. I'm hoping we can get to 200 at some point, and maybe even higher. But I will just keep making builds for you, tutorials soon for how to do dungeons and raids if I can. And I also want to branch out into variety content, because with the way that Destiny is going, and the way that everyone's quitting and making an uproar, and the fact that sometimes I just don't want to play, I'm going to branch out into variety content so I can make a bunch of content on other games that I enjoy. Like Elden Ring, for instance. I have a character that I just find hilarious that I really want to make a series on. Just let me know what you think of that in the comments if you make it this far. Do you want to see variety content? Because I'm more than happy to provide that, and I probably will be providing it anyway. But yeah, just thank you again, and I hope to catch you in the next video. Thank you.